Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Got my guy Jamie Bradford on Inside the Gamecocks, Chief Sports Network. Jamie, Thanksgiving week, man. How you doing, bud?
Man, we're doing great. This is the best week of the year. You've got food and football, and for
Yeah.
the first time in the history of college football, so many games matter, and you've got some good college basketball on this week. Of course, people like you and I, this is our part of our livelihood, so we are working pretty much the whole time, but it's still enjoyable, man. I appreciate you having me back.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you for coming on. I appreciate BetUS for their support. We'll talk about them later. But yeah, no, this is people ask like, what do you like better, Labor Day, which is like the first game, of the year. Obviously, a lot of excitement in that, or Rivalry Week. And with the holiday, we were talking. Obviously, both of our backgrounds are different, both out of town. We always take off this week, so we spend some time away, and then Thanksgiving Day, you get all the football. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday football that is just
Yep.
phenomenal. And yeah, no, I think I lean this being better than Labor Day. Although that one does feel like a little bit like Christmas, and so they're both great. And it's sad that the season is winding down, but I do love this week so much.
Mm,
So,
it's
and for
fun.
the first time in a long time, this game it always means a lot, but it feels like this South Carolina Clemson game probably means more than it has in a really long time for both teams. Really, you think about what is kind of on the line. South Carolina's had a better season than a lot of people would have predicted. Clemson maybe a slightly worse, even though they're just sitting there with the two losses. Um, but a chance maybe to go to the playoff for one of these teams if things break the right way. But
Yep.
yeah, this one just means more than I feel like it has in quite a bit.
Yeah, well, both teams could be in the playoff. Well, I guess we'll just have to see how it all works out. But yeah, I mean, so to your point, I mean, this is one of the more. I mean, I've grown up in this state, so I understand it. It's one of the more underrated rivalries in college football. It's two fan bases that don't like each other, two teams, two programs that don't like each other. There are no pro sports in South Carolina. It's very similar to the Egg Bowl in the great state of Mississippi. Two programs that just flat out don't like each other. There's nothing to pull for other than your college, and so that's what makes it so unique. Auburn, Alabama, but Auburn, Alabama has so much tradition and history in the individual programs. Generally, there's something to play for beyond bragging rights. Maybe it's a playoff spot or a bowl appearance or an SEC championship game appearance or whatever it is. South Carolina and Clemson just hasn't had a lot of that. I guess the the best example or the best time in the rivalry was the golden years under Coach Spurrier, 11, 12, and 13, when Carolina was really good, Clemson was really good. They were competing for league titles and bowl berths and et cetera, et cetera. But now, surprisingly, this year with this 5-game winning streak that South Carolina's on, here we are, right? And there's just so much to play for, and it's I personally think that South Carolina is a better football team. That's not garnet glasses or anything like that. I've watched every second of South Carolina this year. I've watched a ton of Clemson. If you didn't have uniforms on either one of these teams, I would tell you I like this team better, and that would be Carolina. But that does not win this football game at all. You got to go in there and play well, like they did 2 years ago when they got down and they came back and beat the Tigers on their home turf, and they're gonna try to do it again this year, but maybe not be down 14-0 early in the game if they can help that.
Yeah, when I look at this game, I spoke with folks at Clemson, and the Citadel ran for a lot of yards on the Clemson Tigers, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's hard to read so much into a performance against an FCS team. I mean, I know UMass isn't one, but Georgia struggled in the first half. South Carolina wasn't blowing Wofford out early. Yeah, how much is that of? How much can you really take from that? It's hard to extrapolate a lot, and then all three teams ended up blowing out their opponents, but I do wonder if that running attack is kind of and I know that's what South Carolina wants to do in general, but I do wonder if that's kind of the key to South Carolina pulling this thing off is getting Rocket Sanders going, which doesn't take much to get him going, and then
Yeah.
using Lenoris's legs as well, and kind of ground and pounding this thing. And having some success on the ground against a Clemson defense that has been susceptible recently to not only running but just kind of giving up big plays.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong. Look, you have to be able to run the football to beat good football teams. Obviously, like Clemson, and for the large majority of the year, the run game has been the bread and butter for South Carolina's offense. But now they're throwing the football really well, and Lenore Sellers has grown up quickly. He's thrown for 660 yards in the last two games. I know one of those obviously is against Wofford, but he threw for 353 the week before against Missouri. He's thrown 8 touchdowns in the last couple of games. I can make a legitimate argument, and I know you got thousands and thousands of people that watch your program, so I'm sure somebody will jump into the comments and tell me that I'm wrong, and that's okay. It's up for debate. Um,
I will get right back to chatting with Jamie. But first, if you are going to watch this game this weekend, make sure that you've got some action on it. You can go and check out BetUS for a 150% sign up bonus when you use the code YouTube150. That's on your first deposit. Your next two deposits, you still get a bonus of 125% on those second and third deposits. All of that up to $2,000. Make sure that you're betting with BetUS. We appreciate them for their support.
But I can make the legitimate argument that Lenore Sellers is playing the best football of any quarterback in the league right now over the last month. You can go look at all the results and look at all the games and look at all the QBs and how they've played, and he's right there in the thick of it. If he's not playing the best, he's up near the top. He's a big reason for this winning streak that they're on. So, they do need to run the football, but they can throw it, and they've got threats that have emerged here late in the season. Dale Von Campbell, the last couple of weeks, over 200 receiving yards, and about every catch he makes goes for 30 or 40 yards. It's been wild to see his emergence. Nick Harbor running crisp routes, catching the football. Jared Brown being healthy. Josh Simon was out of the game this weekend. He's expected to be back for the Clemson game. He's an NFL tight end. You start adding 2, 3, and 4 options to the passing game with a quarterback who's everything is slowed down. He's seeing the field. He's understanding what he's doing out there. That starts to balance things out a little bit. And when you have to throw the football, you're not as behind the eight ball as maybe you were 7 or 8 weeks ago, right? So it's an offense right now that is putting up a lot of points and not having to just lean on the defense the whole time and hope that Rocket Sanders busts one or Lenore Sellers is able to escape outside and go for 20 or 30 yards to move the ball. They can throw the football. Still a little bit concerned about their pass pro. That's been iffy, I'd say. I mean, he's avoided a bunch of sacks, and had he not done that, the numbers wouldn't be very good. He did go down a couple of times this weekend against Wofford, so they're going to need to clean some things up there. Uh, Clemson's going to be aggressive defensively. They're going to try to go get him and force him into a couple of mistakes if they can. But he's been handling that very, very well. So, yeah, I mean, they have to run the football. But I think one of the keys early in the game Saturday, I think you're going to see them try to calm him down. This is the biggest game of his career in the upstate, in a state he grew up against a team that did not recruit him, in the Clemson Tigers. There's going to be a lot of emotions for this young kid, as talented as he is. I think they're going to probably try to throw a couple short ones early in the game, get him loosened up, get him feeling good, and then probably try to run it from there.
You know, on looking at Clemson's offense, as somebody I know you've watched a lot. I've seen a ton of Clemson this year too. They're
Yeah.
at times just completely anemic, and then at times they, you know, Cade will take off for a 50-yard game-winning touchdown run against Pitt, and just shock you out of
Wow.
nowhere. And so just thoughts on their rushing attack. Vafa, another big back who similar to Rocket, a big kid with a big frame who can run people over, and then you got to kind of account
Yeah.
for their freshman wide receivers that are really good. But all that said, South Carolina's got a heck of a defense that's playing really well in the toughest conference in America. And so to me, that is, as much as I'm looking forward to seeing Rocket and some of the wide receivers you mentioned in Lenore's play, that Clemson offense against the South Carolina defense is something that just ecstatic about being able to see on Saturday.
Yep. They can score points. There's no doubt about that. And they get that running game going. They can be really good. Garrett Riley was taking a lot of heat for a while, kind of wondering, well, where's that Garrett Riley offense, right? And then they kicked it into gear. Cade Klubnik was highly recruited for a reason. He's an outstanding football player. He's sneaky fast. He's got some legs at work, and a lot of people don't realize that if you haven't watched them play. he can beat you with his legs, and that's something that Carolina is very aware of, and they're going to be preparing for that. Phil Maffa is a guy who's been around a long time, and hats off to him for waiting his turn and taking full advantage of it. So many people can't wait to jump in the portal and go other places and look for other opportunities. Phil Maffa wanted to stay up there in the upstate and play for that program, and it's paid off for him. He's a guy who's going to have a chance in the NFL. It's going to be neat this weekend watching two running backs who are probably going to be in the NFL. Rocket Sanders is going to the league, and I think Phil Maffa is going to get some looks too, and he should. I mean, he's a big, strong, good running back, and so yeah, South Carolina's got their hands full. I mean, the key for the Gamecocks is to slow that thing down and put the ball more in Cade Klubnik's hands and try to make them, I don't want to say one dimensional. I think that term gets thrown around a lot, TJ, and like it's something that's easy to do, and it's not. But at least lean more on one dimension than the other so they can be a little bit more predictable. Carolina's got a bunch of ball hawks in the secondary, a bunch of guys who are going to be playing their last game against Clemson. Nicky Manwari is a junior, but he's most likely headed to the NFL, probably as the top safety in the country going into the draft. O'Donnell Fortune, a kid from Sumter who has had an all SEC year out at corner. They don't throw the ball his way very much. And when they do, a lot of the times it ends up in his hands. So these are guys who are looking for opportunities this weekend to make some things happen. But of course, that all starts up front. And Carolina's front four or five, whatever they end up sending, they're going to have to get pressure on Klubnik and try to force some of these issues too, and stop that run as much as they can to make them have to throw it, especially third and long and things like that. I mean, a lot of what I'm saying really comes back to just basic football, right? And when you've got two good teams playing against each other, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, you're a Florida State guy. How many big games have the Noles played in your lifetime? And it all comes back to the same things we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You can run the football and you can stop the run and you can force teams to do things that they don't want to do a lot of. You got a pretty good chance to win. And that's really what it comes back to this weekend for Clemson and South Carolina.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple game that's really hard to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you mentioned some of the secondary. I do wonder, the if Cade has the time, and they've got some true freshman wide receivers in Wesco and more from just right down the well, not right down the road from here, but right down the road from where I live at Tampa Catholic. There,
Hmm.
they've got some talent there, and I'm interested to see how if he's got the time, which all kind of predicated on that, how they match up with some of the more experienced vet secondary members that
Okay.
that South Carolina has. There are so many games within the game, in this matchup. You think about the running game for Clemson against the front of South Carolina, the young wide receivers for Clemson against the secondary, obviously Lenoris and the running game against Clemson's front, which has been really good at times. And so, yeah, there's so many like just little intricate matchups that are really fun in this one. Do you have we've talked about a lot of different players. Do you have an X factor in this one?
You talking about on defense for South Carolina? You
Uh,
mean?
Anywhere in the game, like who's your anywhere in the game for South Carolina?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly on the offensive side, it's Josh Simon. How healthy is he? And if he is healthy, how much attention is Clemson paying to him because of the other threats that have emerged for that Carolina offense? If Josh Simon is able to go out and play at the level he's been playing at for the last 6 weeks or so, that is a really, really good sign for Carolina football. On the defensive side, I think it's TJ Sanders up front, number 90. He's a potential first round draft pick. He's popping up in the first round on a ton of draft boards, CBS and ESPN, and all these mock drafts that keep coming out, which is really, really early. But he's one of three guys on that defense that keep showing up in the first round. If TJ Sanders is causing a stir inside, that's going to create some issues for Clemson big time, because then you get to see Kyle Kennard go to work. And Kyle Kennard right now is a sack and a half shy of tying Jadeveon Clowney's
Wow.
single season record at Carolina. He's 2 sacks shy of breaking it. Can you believe that? Kid transfers in from Georgia Tech. He's been here since like late December, and he's got a chance this weekend in the upstate. to go out and break a record, which is strange because in 2012, when Jadeveon Clowney set that record, it was in this game because he sacked Taj Boyd and the Clemson offense 5 times by himself.
Oof.
So, if Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart and those guys are able to kind of get loose, a lot of that's going to have to do with TJ Sanders, and it's going to create less time to throw the football, which will allow that secondary to kind of hawk around like they've been wanting to hawk around. So I'll keep my eyes on number 90 on defense for the Gamecocks and number 6 on offense.
I know it's hard to predict a game on Monday on a rivalry week, so I'll let you think about it for a minute, and I'll ask you a more fun one. Do you have a Thanksgiving side that you just cannot live without? Like, what's got to be on your plate on Thursday? It's way easier than predicting a game.
You know what, man? I was on this morning on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, and we talked about some of this too. And it's always, I that's a trick question, and here's why. Okay, because if you're anything like me, and I got a feeling you are, if you show up to Thanksgiving with your family, and if your family's anything like ours, everybody brings a dish and whatever, right? So you get there outside of the cranberries. I'm not big on the cranberry sauce or whatever that is, but if you get there and Aunt Linda hasn't brought the dressing, or cousin Christy hasn't brought the mac and cheese, you're disappointed because everybody brings their signature item, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't have somebody. It is it's the 15-yard penalty of it's unsportsmanlike conduct of all unsportsmanlike conducts. If you show up and you didn't bring your signature dish,
Yeah, I tried
everybody's
something new this
required
year.
to do that.
Why are you trying something new?
Yeah, don't do that. You got all off season to figure that out. You got January through October. You figure all that out in the off season, but when you're in Thanksgiving season, you got to go to what works. So, if my mom doesn't bring her mashed potatoes, or my wife doesn't make her broccoli casserole or make her pumpkin pie cheesecake, we've got problems. So, my circling back to the question, I don't have one because I'm disappointed if all of the signature items aren't there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's got to be you got to have the full team on the field. So I can't answer the question because I'm disappointed if one of those things. Now, if there is anything at all where I'm like, okay, everything was phenomenal, and I get to the end and Carrie, my wife, for whatever reason, was not asked or chose not to bring the pumpkin pie cheesecake, I would say I'd be very disappointed in that. That would be the one thing where I'm like, "Yeah, be kidding me." You
Yeah.
know, this is the moment where we're all too full to eat, but you just gotta have that one extra thing, and it's
Yeah.
always that. So that would probably be the one thing, but, yeah, I'm not a one-side guy. I like all of them, but
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
gotta be everybody's signature item.
Load it up. We're out of political season, thank God. But that was the most political coach speak answer that I've ever heard. But it was a good one. It was a
I
really good
know.
one. So,
Yeah, I know, man.
so
Well, it comes up every year. It comes up every year, and
yeah,
I'm like, I I don't know.
it's like picking your kids, man.
This is supposed to be your best meal of the year.
Yeah,
So, why whittle it down and make it about one? I just can't. I don't have the
I love
kahunas
it.
to do that.
I love it. All right, who's winning this weekend?
Yeah, this is I think it opened at 3, and I think it's down to 2.5, and it'll go back and forth, I think, throughout the week. It'll probably end up being right around where it is. Um, I've looked at this for weeks. Um, looking at it, as long as everybody's healthy, right? Okay, if everybody's healthy, who's doing what, and this, that, and the other. I like Carolina, and it's not because that's the side of the fence that I'm on from a pure football stance here. Okay, the South Carolina offense has begun about a month ago to give itself an identity, and they've continued to oil that machine. All right, you got a quarterback in Lenore Sellers who is playing phenomenal. The X factor there is that this weekend he's going to be. I think the high on Saturday in Clemson is around 45 degrees, and it's a noon kick, so it won't be at 45 yet. That high will probably hit after the game's over. So you're talking probably around 40 degrees. It's going to be cold. He's going to be starting for the first time in a rivalry game with so much on the line. That is a big X factor. If he doesn't perform well, a lot of it can probably be attributed to that. But from a pure football standpoint here, TJ, pure football, the Clemson defense this year has not been that lethal force that we've been accustomed to seeing them year in and year out. I think Carolina does have answers to that. The South Carolina defense is better than the Clemson offense. Now, that doesn't mean the Clemson offense can't go out and nip them. They absolutely can. They are capable. But this South Carolina defense, when they're putting pressure, they make people make a lot of mistakes. Cade Klubnik will make mistakes when he is under a bunch of pressure. The key is when he's under pressure, making sure he can't escape and beat you with his legs.
Yeah.
That's the key. If you make sure that he has to throw the football when he's under pressure, or you minimize what he's able to do with his legs, maybe not picking up first downs, it might be 2, 3, and 4 yards, but he's not converting a 3rd and 9 or something like that, they're going to be in really good shape. So in looking at all that, I think it is a really close game, really, really, really tight ball game. But I do like South Carolina. I just think they've got more playmakers, and I think on both lines of scrimmage, I just think that they're better than the Tigers. And if they can get that win, it'll be 2 of 3 consecutive games winning in the upstate on their home turf. And then we'll have to see from there. Do they have enough to get into the playoff as a 9-3 SEC team? There's a lot of talk around it. This will be an outstanding win. It'd be their 4th win on the road this year, which is a big factor in this too. So we'll see if that's enough. But I think they've got enough to get it this weekend.
I like it. I like it. Going to be a fun one. Jamie, where can people follow you? Where can they find your show, bud?
Well, man, we built an app, about a year and I don't know, 15 months ago or something like that. Our network, the Chief Sports Network, it's growing and we've got all kinds of programming there. It's free. You just pull up whatever device you've got, download Chief, like Indian Chief Sports. You can watch our show inside the Gamecocks or JC and Morgan or Chin Music. There's all kinds of shows on there that people really enjoy, and every download helps certainly. And but most importantly, I think people are always pretty happy when they get to watch all the stuff on there. So we would just encourage you to please download the Chief Sports app.
Awesome. Have a good Thanksgiving, man. I appreciate you giving us a little bit of time and chatting today, bud.
Always, man. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Happy Thanksgiving to all the people that watch and listen to your program. It's the best time of the year. I hope everybody's loving time with their family and with their friends and with their football teams.
Absolutely. Thanks, buddy.